I'm Ron Corning for Howdini.com. It has been called one of the leading causes of divorce and one of the most difficult things for couples to talk about. And we're not talking about sex. We are talking about money. Here to help us navigate the money minefield is financial reporter Stacey Tisdale, author of The True Cost of Happiness. It is the first thing most people are going to think. We're talking about sex, because it also might lead to divorce. It also might be difficult to talk about. But money really is up there, right?
I think people have an easier time talking about sex than money. Think about it. I've been in restaurants and overheard conversations about people talking about different, not themselves, just different aspects about sex. When was the last time you heard somebody talk about, oh, I make this amount of money? Well, I spend this amount of money. It's such a taboo subject, and that's why, people really don't have a model for talking about money. Their parents didn't do it. People aren't doing it in their workplace. So I think it's really difficult for couples.
We bring all that baggage into a relationship, and then inevitably issues of money are going to come up, because as a couple you have financial goals you want to meet, number one. You also have financial restrictions and needs that need to be met. So where do you start talking about it, and how do you talk about it?
Before people get to the money talk, there's some things they need to do. I can remember my best intentioned, honey, we need to talk about our finances, has sent my husband running for the exits, or has actually been taken as a call to arms. Before people get to the money talk, they need to be sure they're honoring their spoken and unspoken agreements about money. She might be supposed to contribute $250 to the mortgage. He might be supposed to physically pay the bills each month. If you're not honoring those agreements, don't expect someone to take you seriously when you come to them with suggestions about how to make things better. You've already proven you can't keep your promises.
And if you haven't talked about it and you haven't really laid out together what each of you is responsible for, then I would think some resentment builds, and it builds and it builds, and it's going to rear its ugly head in some other way.
Right, and I think one of the reasons that people run into so much trouble when it comes to money is that they don't look at what people bring to the table. In all of my research, I found there's three things that work in all of our choices of making and spending money. First, the early lessons we learned as children. My husband's parents grew up in the Great Depression. Save, save, save. My parents grew up poor black in the South. We're not going to let a lack of money keep us from getting what we want. How does that play out? He buys generic, I buy organic. There's also social messages that work in our behavior. Men might feel under pressure to have their family live in a certain neighborhood. Women might feel that social stereotype to let men manage the money. And there are also the ways in which we perceive ourselves. Oh, I'm bad with money. Oh, I'm going to have a big payoff one day, so I can go into debt. You have to understand where each other's coming from as individuals. Once my husband and I really looked at that and used a lot of the techniques that I write about in my book, we were able to create goals together. We were able to see where each other's coming from. That allowed me to do what I really wanted to do, stay home with my little boy, freelance, and write a book.
So you talk about here your upbringing, you talk about social pressures. What we haven't talked about is this idea that we're hardwired differently, men and women, to deal with money. It almost goes back to men are from Mars, women from Venus. How does that show itself when it comes to money?
It's a lot of the Mars-Venus thing. First of all, women talk to connect. Men need to feel connected to talk. So, a man can't come to his wife with the, I want you to save more money when he hasn't paid her any attention in the past few days. A lot of conversations about money start when there's conflict, so a connection wasn't really there and it has very little chance of being created. The second is men and women really hear money issues differently. Women will hear any concern or conflict as a need to draw closer. Men hear concern or conflict as, oh my goodness, I'm about to get blamed for something. They really just hear things differently.
Or take it personally because they're hardwired to believe that they're the providers, the breadwinners. They need to always be providing support.
Absolutely. That's probably one of the biggest things, is that money really brings us back to our primitive nature. And as you mentioned, men are born believing that they need to financially provide and protect their family. Society still expects men to be, the primary breadwinner in most cases. And women, what that means is that they tend to look at how a man is providing for them to determine how much he cares about them. Even if they have a hard time admitting it, I know a lot of women who are still surprised if they go out on a date and a man asks them to contribute to the dinner bill. So this puts a lot of pressure on the financial aspect of the relationship.
Well, one of the issues is bringing your financial history into the relationship, and at which point do you really come to understand what your compatibility is when it comes to money, which is something we will talk about in part 2. Stacey, thank you for being here. Stacey Tisdale, the author of The True Cost of Happiness. I'm Ron Corning with Howdini.com.